Hello and welcome to the Supernatural Track here at Continual. I'm your host, Gail Z Martin, and tonight we are talking about The Road Not Taken Season 2, which is our discussion of how Season 2 might have gone in some alternative universes. We find out much, much later that there are plenty of other universes, including one filled with squirrels, that Chuck made, where there are other versions of Sam and Dean. And we know that there's the AU world. But early on, we didn't know that there were so many other possibilities, and yet we get glimpses sometimes from fan fiction or just from imagination to go, I wonder if they'd have done that differently. I wonder if they'd have known what they know later, if they could have done that maybe a little less catastrophically. So we're going to dive into that, but first let's let our wonderful panelists introduce themselves, starting with Carole.
Hi, I'm Carole Stokes. I've been watching Supernatural since season 3, started writing fanfic in 2012, which I continue to this day, and I'm the co-host of the podcast So Get This, The Lore of Supernatural Fanfic, up on Spotify.
Very good. Elektra.
I'm Elektra Hammond. I'm a writer and an editor, and I've been watching Supernatural since that very first episode aired.
Melissa.
Hi, I'm Melissa. I've been a fan of Supernatural since the pilot aired, and you can usually find me here talking about Supernatural.
Very good. Dime.
Hi, I am Dimeliora or Dime, and I joined the fandom right around season 7. And you can find me on AO3 or Live Journal. I write nonsense fan fiction.
And I'm Gail Z Martin, and Morgan Bryce. As Gail, I write epic and urban fantasy. As Morgan, I write urban fantasy, male paranormal romance. But all my modern worlds are ones where Sam and Dean could walk in and feel right at home. So looking at season 2, we'll just go around and have a good old time and just pick one or two things each time we go around. We'll come back to you. You'll get a chance to say more. But where could season 2 have split off and done some AU kind of things? And how would that have changed things? Carole?
I'm going to go with a big one, so everybody chime in on this if you want. What if Dean had actually talked about his guilt feelings, how he felt about John's sacrifice for him to live? What if he had actually talked about that, expressed his feelings, let Sam know what was going on? Questions, comments?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, it's part of that whole keeping secrets thing that gets them in trouble for the next 10 seasons. And gradually they get better about it. But yeah, definitely.
We don't talk about our feelings, and we do not talk to shrinks.
Well, and if in that same aspect of talking about John, if he had faced John's, well, if you can't save your brother, you might have to kill him thing head on with Sam and said, we have a problem here. Let's come at this together.
And just admitting it, just admitting the guilt he feels, even instead of like trudging around with it on his back and, lashing out at everybody and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Elektra?
Well, one of the other things that I was watching as time went on was This Is Us. So what if Gordon, instead of being a hard-headed jerk, had actually listened when they said, look, we're good guys, and he'd become the black older brother they never knew they had. And it had been the 3 Winchesters, although one of them wasn't really a Winchester, and they'd gone off together and done things and been like an even stronger team, 2 white guys and a black guy, sort of like the triplets on This Is Us, only different. And, you know,
Bobby Bruce with another white guy.
well, because Sterling K. Brown is just so awesome. And he would have been great
Yeah.
if he'd been on the show like all the time. So
Well, you could say the same thing about, you know, we get our first look at why is his name the FBI agent
Victor Henriksen.
Henriksen. See, Victor and Gordon could have joined up with the Winchesters, and you know, that would have changed everything. I'm convinced.
It's such a credit to Sterling that I hate Gordon so much.
Yes.
Like, I just hate him. And it's a, you know, but it's because he played that character so well. And, you know, and I think that's a great point because he was an awesome hunter. It wasn't like he wasn't a good hunter. He was skilled and knowledgeable and all that stuff. He was just such a jerk. So if they had taken the jerk part out or, you know, beaten it out of him or something, he would have been a great ally, you know.
they turned around and had him play Leo when they did the live action version of The West Wing.
Oh, I didn't watch
Because
that.
they had lost the one of the actors had passed. And he was the guy they picked to slide into that cast.
Yeah, he's
He's just
so good.
that good.
He is
Yeah,
good.
because I used to think, oh man, God, this Gordon guy is really horrible. And then I was like, wow, kudos.
He's really horrible. He's just that good of an actor.
Just that good.
Melissa?
I gotta refer to my notes. In my time of dying, what if Azazel had refused John's offer? Right. So Dean dies. So now you've got Sam dealing with all that grief. You've got John maybe even more enraged than after Mary died. What would the series have looked like if it had been Sam and John hunting instead of Sam and Dean, trying to get revenge for the deaths of their loved ones?
Or maybe even Sam would have tried to bargain then and not later.
Yes, also true. Or
There
And
would have been
maybe Azazel would have liked that because then he would have had control over Sam.
there would have
Yeah.
been an entire
we've had our boy
season
king
of-
much sooner.
The boy king. Yep.
there would have been an entire season of them trying to find a way to get Dean back.
Love it.
Dime?
Well, for that part, I feel like we're giving John too much credit. I don't know that he would do that much work for either of them, but that's
A
just
plus
my vibe.
parenting.
But going off of kind of what you guys were touching on earlier that Carole started, I think one of the biggest questions I had coming out of season 2 was from that moment when Dean tries to tear up the Impala to like destroy the last part of it. And I think one of the things I always wondered was if Dean had had just the smallest ounce of self-love, like even just a tiny bit of self-esteem, would he have still done that? Or in that moment, would he have looked at the car and said, wait, no, this is mine instead of John's? And he wouldn't have destroyed that last thing that really is his that he thought he didn't deserve. So I've always wondered, like, just the tiniest bit, if Dean had seen himself as an autonomous creature, would he have been able to have taken that and moved it into something that would have been a stronger bond with Sam or with Bobby or with anyone around him that would have been able to hear him out in that moment?
Yeah.
Very true.
So I look at Crossroad Blues and say, what if they about the Hellhound glasses, which didn't come up until about season 13. Remember, if you put glasses in flaming holy oil, then you can see hellhounds. And they don't find this out until way later, after it could have done a lot of good. But
After they have the holy oil.
yeah, well, you know, they have all kinds of stuff in the trunk. Bobby probably has a gallon of it, you know, out in his garage.
Under the stairs.
Under the stairs, yeah, as one does. But if they'd have had hellhound glasses, they could have dispatched the hellhounds, maybe worked out a deal with Crowley, who didn't want anything to happen to Juliet. This, and certainly later on in season 3 could have been a game changer. So yeah, I want hellhound glasses a little earlier. Back to you, Carol.
All right, let's see. What if John had told Sam and Dean about his suspicions regarding Azazel, the special children, even though he might not have fully understood what was going on, he knew there was some kind of connection there. He knew Azazel had some kind of plan about raising an army and stuff. What if he had at least told them, like, before he died, and they would have at least walked into it all knowing something was up ahead of time. And then even when they go to see Ash, they would already have more pieces of the puzzle. Ash can still help them solidify that and narrow their focus. But they would already be like, oh, here's this thing, here's this machination in place, instead of spending that much more time, wandering around in the dark.
You mean John communicating to his children? Perish the thought. But you're right. If John had told both boys what was going on, say before Sam left for college, right? Sam might have still gone off to college, but he would have at least understood why his father was so against it. And that could have changed the dynamics there. And if they'd all had the information, they could have been working to solve the puzzle together instead of John being John. And I'm just going to let that go there. We know how I love John.
Yeah, I mean, every parent harbors some fears. Is my child going to go off to college and do drugs? Is my child going to go off to college and drink themselves blind for 4 years or get up to other problems? John's looking at it going, is my son going to lead a demon army and become the boy king of hell? It's a little different aspect. But still, I agree, caring and sharing. Sam, look, this is why we're worried. I totally trust you not to do all these other things. But on this hell thing, can we talk? If you don't talk to your children about hell, who will?
Who will?
I think it just needs to be said. Melissa, I think we were on you. I've totally lost track. Did we get? No, wait. We started with Carol, so I think we're on.
Yeah, Carol.
Elektra.
They spend a lot of time this season at Harvell's. What if they had actually sat down after No Exit and actually talked to Ellen about what went bad between John and her husband, and not, allowed all of the bad blood to fester, and used Harvell's as their base of operations from that point forward, and actually, had sort of, let Ellen mother them some, because, well, she actually kind of liked them.
Yep. I actually had that down too. What if Ellen had revealed about John's involvement, with her husband's death, and didn't have to come out and be this like horrible thing. It would have been much more like, what, this shit happens. We're hunters.
How about if John didn't get Bill killed? How about that?
How about what?
John didn't get Bill killed. How about if that is the way?
Well, that would have been a good one too. Bill survives the hunt, and then there is no bad feelings at all. And we have Bill in play on the field. We could have Bill be another backup hunter, and a hell of a lot better than Walt and Roy.
Oh,
I'm not trying to kill
God,
Sam.
yes. But then they've got Harvell's as a place they can go back to when they need to recharge, where they can get a hot meal and spend a couple nights in a decent.
Didn't Kripke say he hated the Roadhouse and that's why he burned it down?
Yep. And I'm with Elektra. I really liked it. I liked the
I did too.
Roadhouse. I liked how it was a good crossing place for stuff to happen. It's no worse than the bunker. It doesn't have all the fabulous extra rooms, but it had a couple of great characters there. You had a great, way to have things happen action wise and spin out from and return to.
Well,
Yeah, I always really liked it.
And they didn't have to go out and, bilk somebody out of their money playing pool or steal somebody's credit cards in order to get a room for the night there.
Yeah, well, and while I think the idea was Kripke wanted them isolated, I do think that there are an awful lot of story ideas. Just because they have a place they can occasionally stop and get information, wouldn't
or recover.
Yeah, wouldn't
Recover from wounds or something. Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't mean they have to be there all the time. So yeah, I agree.
It's a big damn country.
Yeah.
Especially that middle part.
I mean, despite the fact that they seem to be able to drive from one end to the other extremely quickly, and it doesn't take any time, it really does take a lot of time to drive from one place to another.
Yeah.
And you have to stop and rest.
And I'll tell you, in fanfic, the Roadhouse is, there's tons of stories utilizing the Roadhouse in many different ways. And every single one of them is plausible and, could have been a great option.
It's even become an add-on at supernatural conventions where you can pay $20 a day and go to the Roadhouse and have all kinds of activities going on. So,
but no drinks. But no drinks.
No drinks. Melissa?
It's Dime next, isn't it?
No,
Is it me?
not on my
Okay.
screen.
Okay. Going back to Crossroads Blues. What if they didn't actually take that hunt for the black dog that ended up being a hellhound, and the guys get that much closer firsthand experience of that crossroad deal? So then maybe Dean doesn't have enough familiarity when Sam dies to actually go and make that deal. And most of all, if they don't take the case, then Dean doesn't meet that demon who is telling him about how his father is in hell, and he's got even more of that crushing guilt on him, dragging his already horrible self-esteem to sub-basement levels. Like, what if that just never all happened? Would we have a different Dean, and would that outcome of all hell breaks loose be different because Dean wouldn't have had those tools so fresh in his head and in his experience? Just wondering.
Good point. Dime?
So my next one was about children shouldn't play with dead things and the whole interaction between Anson and Andy and Sam. And I think what I wonder is if that had played out just the smallest bit differently. Like it really broke Sam to see that it was almost inevitable that everybody that Azazel touched was going to end up being a killer. All of them were going to end up destroying things. And if Sam had been able to just that once kind of break the cycle and pull Anson away, even if it meant Sam or Dean killing Anson, just so Andy wouldn't have to, would that sort of like hope, really, that last little piece of hope still be with him in a way that would make him take better care of himself and make him really push and strive to survive and possibly get out of Cold Oaks, on his feet. So yeah, what if?
Well, we talked about, what if Gordon hadn't been such a dick and maybe Henriksen had joined up with Hunting, but what if Ronald had teamed up with Frank Devereaux? It's a match made in heaven. I mean, they're both crazy conspiracy theorists. They're both, into technology and building their own gadgets. And I can just see kind of Thelma and Louise, with Frank and Ronald in that rattle trap RV on the road, investigating UFOs when they aren't, doing other stuff. That I would pay money for that. I mean, that would have
been great.
Yeah, Ronald definitely needed to not die and end up being someplace in the Hunter sphere or in the Bobby sphere.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
Yeah.
he turns out to be Frank's long lost nephew.
There you go.
I'll buy that.
Carol.
Oh gosh. So we touched on this briefly. So let's say the first time we meet Victor is, I believe, in Night Shifters with Ron, right? So what if Victor had found out about and believed in the monsters then? Like that, and not episodes later until he gets blown up in Justin Bello. So what if he had found out then that demons are real, monsters are real, Sam and Dean are really the good guys, but then he had still even kept working as a Fed, but knowing what he knows, and so A, could help deflect stuff off the Winchesters, and B, could actually help them, you know, with his assets and his skill and, you know, his databases and, you know, he could have, even if he still ended up dying in Justin Bello, he would have been such a strong ally all that time.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite fanfic tropes. Is I love the idea that Victor was there and he could, you know, stay in the FBI and, like you said, keep them off of the worst of the heat off of them. And, you know, they teach him what to look for in terms of patterns and crime patterns and stuff, so that he can then feed that information, whether it's to Sam and Dean or just to Bobby to distribute to the other hunters. Like, what a cool resource that would have been.
Yeah. Oh, just imagine Victor Henriksen meeting Ash. That would be a great moment.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, but we've already got, you know, like Donna, and, you know, we've had sheriffs and stuff who are in law enforcement that also hunt on the side. There's no reason why there
Victor could have been
be
the first.
FBI guys doing it.
Yeah. Elektra?
It's in their skill set. Oh Lord. How about, you know, something really dumb here? Born Under a Bad Sign, we get that whole thing with Sam running around doing things that he ought not to do and getting himself into all kinds of trouble and pissing off other hunters because the two of them do not have charms or anything else to keep them from being possessed. Would somebody please explain to me why they do not have anything to keep them from being possessed? Could we maybe get them like anti-possession tattoos somewhat earlier? Because like hunters, hello. Did they not know about these? Did they not?
I do think it was something that hadn't really happened much up to that point.
Yeah.
Like they didn't really realize that demons were really now utilizing that. So, you know, that's where at least he did have charms. And then it, you know, and then subsequently the boys were like, well, the heck with the charm, let's just put it right on our bodies. You know, so in reality, of course, I'm sure it was just that the writers were writing and they're like, hey, let's do this now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think we should have had the charms earlier on. You know, I think that should have been standard hunter fare, like you know, on your keychain or something.
Yeah. Definitely.
Oh, like Mary's charm bracelet. Didn't she have stuff on her charm bracelet? They had all the different,
Yeah.
you know, it looked like, oh, pretty charm bracelet, but it really had a lot of like sigils and things.
Yeah, it was protection.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
she was around kind of before them.
Just a little. Yeah. Melissa?
In All Hell Breaks Loose, what if Dean and Bobby got there 5 minutes earlier? And as Jake is, you know, getting ready to throw the knife, Dean hollers down and Sam hits the deck and Dean shoots him. We're done. That whole concept of Dean selling his soul and all that stuff doesn't happen because they get there 5 minutes earlier. That it would have just taken 5 minutes. And then we would have had the apocalypse and just, yes, I know it would have taken away a whole story arc and everything, but just
There'd be
how
new
would that
story
have-
arcs though, you know, like, and who knows what they would have been. There could have been all kinds
Well,
of new
and-
stuff that then sprang up.
Well, because if Dean had killed him, then Sam is the Boy King, right? So now, because he's the last surviving child, so could he have gone into the cemetery and met with Azazel and pretended to go along with him and somehow double cross him in the cemetery? Like there's all these different things that could have happened. So just saying.
Yeah. Dime?
What if roadkill hadn't happened? Sorry, that was a joke.
We're all like, what?
Yeah, no, that was gonna be Tall Tales actually is where I'm gonna go. So I have this dream, this silly dream, that Tall Tales happened, and when it happened, Dean and Sam, slightly tricksterish themselves, would kind of respect the game that Loki was pulling there and just let him walk. It's not like he went after anybody that they were very upset about or did anything that they really emotionally found immoral, other than the murdering part.
He
So
only killed the one guy, didn't he? He killed the professor. But then the others, he just like spanked them.
yeah, they probed them and spanked them. Yes,
Right.
but like I
and
feel
spanking. It all got very kinky.
yeah, just whatever goes in. I feel like if they had respected that kind of game, like if they had looked at him and said, okay, don't do it again, mister, and like let him walk, how would that have changed how he interacted with them later? How much more would he have respected them? How much more of a chance would he have given to have spoken to them, kind of pushed them along? So I have this dream where they looked at him and they went, this is much cooler than gluing someone's hand to a headboard. This is fun.
Yeah.
I can see that. So what if Sam had picked up the knife that Jake dropped in All Hell Breaks Loose? He's the one who found that knife to begin with and gave it to Jake. Jake drops it. We have no reason to think Jake has another knife. Even if Bobby and Dean didn't get there 5 minutes early, Jake didn't have a knife. So he could body slam Sam, but he wouldn't have been as immediately lethal. And of course we get that close up of the knife in the mud going, that's a mistake. But what if he hadn't left the knife? That would have made it a lot harder for Jake to kill him quite so quickly. And that could have changed everything. Carol?
Well, let's see. What if in Houses of the Holy, the guy really had been an angel and not simply a deluded ghost? And they found out about angels then. And then would angels have been quite so dickish, or would they at least have been more ready to, oh, I got Melissa. Yes. Would they have at least been more prepared to deal with angels down the pike? At least they knew angels would have existed by then. It's all kind of nebulous, but like, what if, they find out about angels here instead of, 2 years later, 3 years later, and get blindsided, by them.
When you mean when Dean is doing that whole thing about there's no such thing as angels because we totally have known about it, one of the angels just shows up and says, "No,
Here we are."
Exist. Just
either shows up or the priest had become. Or there's all kinds of here they were actually talking about it and poo-pooing it and like, hey, you know what? You were wrong.
Yeah, because I've never seen one, so they can't possibly exist. They're on my bullcrap list.
Like chupacabras.
No, that chupacabras apparently exist. They just never did one, right? They talked about like I was chasing one down in Mexico.
Like Bigfoot or Santa Claus.
Oh, poor Melissa's trying to say something.
They know demons exist. So I I always struggled with the whole angels don't exist. You know, demons exist. If demons exist, why aren't you willing to at least accept the premise that their counterpart exists? Don't you believe in balance in the universe?
Yeah, they already believe in heaven and hell, at least.
Yeah.
Well-
Heaven's empty.
Dean just figured that there was so much lore on the angels that he would have seen one by now if they existed. And I think that was just a setup for, we're thinking about introducing them later, and we want to make sure that everybody gets that Dean thinks they don't exist. So he'll be super surprised when he meets one.
Well,
Okay.
they even said they had even gone, I believe Jared and Jensen had even gone to Kripke and said, well, are we going to get into this like whole angel thing? And he's like, no, no, no. And yeah.
But what I heard, and I haven't seen the clip, was that they, being good little Texas boys, were kind of worried that this was going to be a religion bashing show, and were very uncomfortable with that, and went to Kripke and said, hey, we're not going to be going like that. No, no, no. And then 14 seasons later, let's kill God. I mean,
Details.
Yeah, but we did, they did a good job of it by then.
And God's a
It wasn't
dick. I
God
mean, come on.
anymore. It was Chuck.
Yeah.
It's true. That's
You
true.
know, weaselly little guy. Oh, yeah, you have.
So I don't remember whether I left off with Carol or Elektra.
Yeah,
Whose
it
turn
was,
it?
yeah, it was me. So now it's Elektra.
Elektra?
Ah, okay, where are we?
Battling
Um,
with angels and chupacabras.
Chupacabras. Well, all right. Tall tales. What if that had really been Loki and not Gabriel pretending to be Loki? And what if Gabriel really hadn't been around? And, you know, that was Loki, and they actually managed to kill him, and that was the end of that.
And then
Yeah.
all the other gods could have gotten really angry, like when we see them in what's the hotel?
Elysian Fields?
Yes.
The Elysian Fields, and then, yeah, that would have, there'd been gods that would have been pissed at them the whole time. And every now and again, a god would pop up and come after them because, well, they killed Loki.
And Gabriel wouldn't have been there to help them with Lucifer.
He wouldn't have been there to help with them with a lot of things, but he also wouldn't have been there to superpower Kentucky Fried Prince of Hell.
Asmodeus.
The Kentucky Fried Prince of Hell.
Oh, and they would have even had problems with the rift then, because they needed the archangel grace for the rift.
Mhm.
You know,
It
Yeah.
would have,
repercussions.
yeah. Gabriel was used for a lot of stuff. They drained him good and dry and used pieces of him for everything.
This is true.
Okay.
Melissa?
What if Jake, instead of kind of disappearing, if he had actually stayed in touch with the guys and learned how to use his powers for good, or like even if he didn't use his powers because he was afraid of them, or just stayed in contact with the guys, because there was just all these different opportunities where pulling him off the bench would have been fun and useful.
You know, in the anime series, we get some insight into Jake's background. And the premise is that Azazel threatened his grandma and his little sister and his younger brother and said, well, if you won't do what I want, I'll take your brother. I'll hurt your family. And that he had been, he makes a passing comment about how hey, I was in Afghanistan this morning and now I'm here. And in the anime, he's having difficulty in a war zone not showing his abilities because his instinct is to use them to save people. At one point, he picks a truck up off of somebody after an IED flips it. And then it's like, well, how'd you do that, man? Adrenaline. It was all adrenaline. But we actually got some of those insights into why he did what he did. And yeah, he would have made a great hunter. Dime.
So playthings. is, of course, has to be mentioned every time, especially because I'm a fan fiction author and it launched so many stories. I wonder if they had come at playthings a little bit less against each other, because at that point they're getting along on the surface and they're not at all on the bottom. If they had come in just a little bit less against each other, how would Sam have broached the topic with Dean of not wanting to become evil? Like, would he have been able to, watching what was happening, soberly tell Dean, look, I don't want to end up that way, man. And you know, it's a scene that's in every zombie movie and in every aliens film. Like, there's always that conversation that happens. And that could have been a constructive discussion. It could have been the two of them having this open moment where Sam is admitting he doesn't want to become something awful, and Dean is telling him, you could never be something awful, so it's fine. And instead, Sam gets drunk and just calls him bossy and cries about it. And it's really just horrific because Sam doesn't communicate as much as he should what he's feeling, so none of that gets closed out. They just bury it back under, and they never discuss the fact that Dean couldn't, like, even if he had to, he couldn't. So it just gets hung out there, and I wonder if they could have like closed that loop if they had just been a little more in sync at that point.
Yeah, every now and then
Use
my
their words.
says, you're bossy, and I instinctively say, and short.
Short. That's why we were all laughing.
He's only watched the show once, so there's this moment it's like, oh, it's one of those supernatural things. Melissa, you were going to say something.
I was just gonna say the reason we were all laughing is because with that quote with that you're bossy and short. We weren't laughing at what you were saying, Don, was very true and resonated. But we all, the three of us, have that it's Gail's fault. No, it's Gail's husband's fault. Let's blame him.
Right. We'll blame. So what if Sam had continued to have telekinesis? You know, he had that one moment when he moved the armoire in front of out from in front of the door to save Dean's life. That could have really come in handy, even if it was unpredictable and difficult to control. By embracing that side, they could have had an awesome weapon. They could have learned more about the occult instead of fearing it. You know, later on we get Sandwich, so you know he does come into his power.
He's very tasty too.
There's spells left and right. I see 15. So, you know, what's a little telekinesis between friends? I would have really, that could have really come in handy. And then if the overall thing, if Dean had said, look, dude, I don't care if you are the boy king of hell, I'll be right next to you. I will be your knight of hell. We will walk into hell together. There are a bunch of great stories like that. But just you're not going anywhere without me. And I'm not afraid of you. You're not a monster. We're both monsters. We're just going to do this together. I would have made it, the angels wouldn't have had a wedge. It would have changed everything. And, you know, even more brother bond. I'm all for that. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
They had the perfect opportunity with that telekinesis to go to Missouri because, all right, she's at psychic, and I get that psychics, you know, it's not the same thing, but they at least had somebody who had powers and used them in a positive way. They could have gone back to Missouri and said, here's what he can do, and we need some help to help him learn how to control it, use it, or recognize that he can't control it, so he can't use it ever. Like, but the writers, that would have given the boys another tool in their tool bag, and it would have made them a little bit more difficult to beat, so they couldn't let that actually happen. But they should have. It would have been cool.
It would have. Carol, back to you.
This is a much smaller scale one now. What if in Heart, when they kill the werewolf who sired Madison, I'm getting choked up. What if when they killed the werewolf, it did in fact cure her? And Sam didn't have to kill her. And, of course, we wouldn't have had that tragic moment, but, maybe Sam could have at least had a little bit of a relationship, or, maybe he could have at least, he wouldn't have had to have that guilty, because he felt so guilty afterwards, like it was his fault. And of course, it's not his fault, but he felt it was his fault.
You mean what Sam's dick of death was not an awful
Right.
But they just wait 4 seasons and then they kill her off screen for no fucking reason. That's all.
Well,
So,
there's that, but
Didn't do it in the first 10 minutes, so you're fine.
they have a cure for werewolves. It just doesn't show up till we get the British Men of Letters.
Mhm.
So,
Well,
maybe you could have a cure.
How about if they found the cure and cured Madison, but it was too late for Claire, so they had to shoot her?
You just don't like Claire.
No.
I don't.
nope, nope. Or what if they had, how Garth had the family with that, that group, the pack of werewolves?
Yep.
What
Yep.
if they knew about packs like that and they could have gotten her, like, okay, they
Right.
couldn't cure her. They tried that didn't work, but they could have at least helped her live with a pack of, cow heart eating
Yeah.
werewolves instead of humans.
Vegetarian werewolves.
So it's sort of like dog fostering with werewolves.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm in. That works. Elektra.
I just always liked her so much.
Yeah.
Okay. After what is and what should never be, what if Dean decided that that was a pretty good life, and while he couldn't have Mom, maybe he could have Carmen, and he goes off and just obsesses about trying to find the woman who's in those ads for the El Sol beer. And he doesn't want to hunt. He just wants to find this woman until he finally does. And for some reason, she is absolutely just not interested. She's married, she's gay, she just, he's not her type. She doesn't speak English.
There are some excellent fanfics involving the Jinn, especially in terms of like when, Sam gives up, thinks Dean is dead, thinks he's never coming back, and he goes and finds a Jinn and says, "Just give me my happy memories until I go. You can feed off me. I don't want to be saved." Of course, Dean saves it, but I would have loved to have seen the Jinn show up more often, because they were such a fascinating. There's so many fascinating possibilities with that. Melissa?
I'm going to pass this round because we've touched on just about everything. We've gone past everything I had in my notes. I'm sorry.
Okay. Dime.
what if Dean had kept his mouth shut at the end of Croatoan? Like, what if he had gotten to that point where he watched this terrible thing happen and they managed to dodge the, just deadliest bullet? Like, they thought Sam was done and there was no question. And then it ended up not being. What if Dean had looked at that and said, I will bury this secret with myself. We've won, we did it, and we don't need to go down that path. And he had just taken the W and moved on. He could have skipped so much self-loathing that Sam built up that ends in Sam's addiction issues and Sam's inability to speak to Dean about his weaknesses and his vulnerabilities. All of that could have been ended if Dean had just looked at this wonderful moment and said, let us bask in the glory of this with some beer and some pizza, and moved on with their lives.
Very good point.
Yeah. What if in Hollywood Babylon, the boys decided that instead of grifting credit cards and shooting pool, Dean actually was a really good PA. And so he would pick up jobs as a PA, and maybe Sam ends up teaching yoga or working for craft
If we
services.
were in California, Sam would have just gone back to school.
Yeah, and Dean is a PA, and they hunt on the weekend, or they hunt all these things that have to do with haunted Hollywood. And yeah, Sam goes back to school part-time. Dean's a PA with all the craft services food he can eat. And you know, they chase down celluloid monsters like in Monster Movie.
What if they made a TV show based on their lives and then got sued for plagiarism by Chuck?
Or by the ghost facers.
Yeah.
Hey, wait, stop. That's brilliant. Can one of you write that, please? Or have you written it and I haven't read it? In which case, slide me the link.
And for that matter, just because we have to mention Folsom Prison Blues before we go, is, you know, what if their buddy couldn't get them out? What if they didn't get out in time, and then they have to figure out how to get out of a bigger jam? We do see some of that with a kind of dumb resolution all the way down in the end of season 12. But, you know, this could have been interesting. Of course, Dean would have ended up running a prison gang, and Sam would have gotten his law degree as a prisoner and been working on appeals for the other prisoners. So Sam would have all of this social capital because nobody wants to hurt Sam. He's going to get me out. And besides that, his brother's kind of crazy. And Dean's gang with the cigarettes, you know, it would be sort of like Orange is the New Black with hunters.
Yeah.
Plaid is the new black.
That's it. We've got it. All right, everybody. As usual, we've blown through our time. But before we go, let's let everybody know where they can find you online, starting with Carol.
I'm on here on Facebook, on a lot of continual panels, and in the continual group, and I'm also in the TFWNC group on Twitter. I am true_firesign10. On Instagram and AO3, I'm firesign10. And as Ellis Colton, I'll be publishing my first romance later this year.
Awesome. Elektra.
Elektra Hammond, you can find everything you would possibly want to know about me at untilmidnight.com. You can find me on Mastodon at Elektra at Wandering Shop. And I've got my first fanfic coming out later this year. It's a well-world story and coming out in permutations.
Very good. Melissa.
Kitty and I can be found here on continual panels talking about supernatural. And you can find me on Twitter at Tin Hat Daydreams. I would say mind the profile for that one. It's not going to be everybody's taste. That's my fanfic travels.
Very good. Dime.
You can find me on AO3 or LiveJournal as Dimeliora, writing a supernatural fan fiction. And you can find me here sometimes.
Very good. And you can find me at gailzmartin.com, morganbryce.com. Spell them right. You'll find me on all the social media under those names. I run the Supernatural TFWNC fan group here on Facebook. I am a columnist for the Winchester Family Business, but most of the time you can find me here on Continual. So thank you all so much for being wonderful panelists, and thanks to all of you for watching and listening. There will be more Supernatural coming up soon, so we'll see you online.